cherish things precisely because they cannot last. It is their frailty that adds sweetness to their beauty. Yeah. I see you nodding your head. You agree?
I totally agree. And look, there are so many examples in literature where great authors have imagined a world that was immortal. And in almost all of those descriptions, it doesn't turn out well, right? The characters get bored. The characters look for some challenge, but in an immortal world, challenges take on a very different quality. Who's afraid of doing anything if you're guaranteed that you will still be here? What does it mean to triumph over some challenge if you try hard enough and long enough and you've got an eternity to do it, well, certainly you're going to triumph at some point. So I agree. The finite nature of life and the finite nature of everything gives a certain value to the here and the now that would evaporate if everything lasted forever.
It is a great motive not to waste your time while you're here, isn't it?
If you have an infinite amount of it, what would it mean to waste it?
Exactly.
So exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, one more quote. Futurist, technologist Ray Kurzweil once said, "Death gives meaning to our lives. It gives importance and value to time. Time would become meaningless if there were too much of it." It is funny, though.
I'm surprised with that quote. I didn't think that quote would go in that direction because Ray really thinks that we're on the precipice of being immortal. At least that's what he wrote about in one of his books.
And yet he agrees with you here.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
We'd like to be full of surprises.
Yeah,
in this
that's
program.
good.
Does death and the potential end of all life in the universe, therefore, if we're going to come full circle here, give our lives the meaning that you were talking about at the beginning of this conversation?
For me, it does.
It does.
Right? You know, for me, the recognition that we are impermanent and the recognition that we are the output of random quantum laws, right, that do stretch back to the Big Bang. And sort of in the book, I walk you through the various key moments in that journey. But the case is, each of those results could have turned out differently, that way instead of this, yielding a world in which we would not be here. So the very fact that we are here is astoundingly unlikely. And beyond just the odds, look at what our random collection of particles is able to do. Shaped by evolution and natural selection, we're so exquisitely ordered that we can illuminate mystery, right? We can experience wonder. We can create beauty. And I'm really talking about everything that goes back to the pyramids, the writing of Macbeth and Hamlet, the composing of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the discovery of quantum mechanics and general relativity. So these capacities are what fill me with the only word I can use, gratitude. Gratitude for being alive, gratitude for being part of the species. And that fills me with a deep sense of meaning and purpose just to be part of that journey.
Having said that, do you have your moments of depression and doubt? And let's pluck it right from the headlines today. When you see the world engulfed in pandemics, which could end it, I mean, entropy is winning, right?
Yeah, well, you can't help but, as a human being, react to the local things that happen in the world around us. And again, it sort of resonates with what I was describing in the book. There are these parallel stories. Of course, even when I'm thinking on the grandest of timescales and thinking about meaning and purpose in that environment, in parallel with that, I'm thinking about the things that are more local, happening right here. They can almost feel parochial by comparison, but they matter to our day-to-day lives. So yeah, do I have my moments of doubt and darkness and depression and anxiety about things that are happening in the real world? Absolutely. But at the same time, I am able, because of sort of the way I think about things, to pull back and see that in context. And it does give a different perspective. I think it gives uncanny perspective that I definitely take solace in.
Did you know Carl Sagan?
I met him, but I didn't really know him.
I asked because you two, one can occasionally see these similarities in people who do what you guys do, which is a kind of, you're men of science, but you've got a poetry about the way you see the world. Does that come with the job?
It can, and certainly Carl Sagan was a master of that. And as I was a kid growing up and watching his shows and reading his books before I was able to one day shake his hand, I did at Cornell University when I started there as a professor, he inspired me. So it's gratifying to hear that you hear some resonance in the way we look at the world.
You didn't do the Carson show, as he did, but...
I did Letterman.
You did Letterman. Okay, well,
Colbert.
Yeah, oh, I know. You've been on Colbert a lot, haven't you?
Yeah, no, Colbert loves these ideas. He's incredibly smart. Obviously, you know, comedic in his approach, but deeply thinking about these issues.
Is there something, though, about the world of atoms or the world of nature that brings out the poetry in you guys?
I think so, because when you're able to look into the inner workings of reality and also experience reality as we humans do on the everyday scales, it adds a richness. You know, Richard Feynman, one of the great physicists, he once said, you know, he was told by somebody that reducing a flower to its molecules and atoms takes away the poetry. And Feynman famously said, no, it doesn't. It adds to the poetry because I can smell the rose and I can see it as you do, but I can also see its inner workings. And that accentuates the poetry.
If people want to Google him, it's F-E-Y-N, right?
Yes, exactly
Feynman,
right. Yeah.
F-E-Y-N. Okay, let's finish up on this. Writers may write, scientists do science to achieve a legacy, to outlive their deaths. If you think of some of the great writers in history, they seem, a lot of them, pretty miserable. It doesn't seem to be the case with scientists. And even a guy like Stephen Hawking, who had every reason in the world to be miserable, always seemed to be this great happy warrior towards finding more information. I think Feynman played the bongos, didn't he?
He did. He did.
Okay, what do you think accounts for this difference?
Well, I think it's basically what I was saying a moment ago. We have a perspective on the human condition that doesn't eliminate the trauma and the anxiety and, if you will, the depression that some of us can go through, and recognizing the difficulties of life, the difficulties of being a social species, trying to navigate life on a rock that's circling a nondescript star in the outskirts of an ordinary galaxy. So we have that feeling too, but when you pull back and you think about, as Carl Sagan did, the Earth is a pale blue dot floating in the void. When you think about, as I describe in this book, our moment in cosmic history just being a little part of this grand expanse, that perspective, I think, allows you to take in the world in a different way. And I do think it's a way that ultimately is uplifting.
I want to ask you, I know you're not a political scientist, you're a scientist of a different kind, but I am curious in your view about the fact that the person who holds the highest office in the land, in your land, seems to be quite anti-science. In fact, he started this whole COVID-19 thing by saying it was probably a hoax by the deep state. As a man of science, how troubled are you by the fact that there is somebody so anti-science in the White House?
Well, it's deeply troubling. It's tragic on the level of trying to push science forward in an environment that doesn't value the insights of science. But now we see that not only is it tragic in that abstract sense, it's tragic at a very human level. People may die by virtue of policies that are driven by an anti-science perspective. So this really brings it right down to brass tacks, and it's an awful circumstance that I hope will go away sometime quite soon. You know, in this book, I'm talking about huge timescales. And the 4 years that this individual ran I hope that it will only be 4 years. That will be a blink of an eye, I hope, in the grand unfolding of human life on this planet, because it is an awful period.
What if he's the president until the end of time?
That will definitely require a new chapter to be written in the book.
Well, I plucked that line, of course, from the title of your book, which is Until the End of Time, Mind, Matter, and Our Search for Meaning in an Evolving Universe. I not only want to thank you for coming here and being so brilliant, if I may say, but I really wish you well with your bad back, which
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Herniated discs are no damn fun, so good luck with that.
Thank you.
That's Brian Greene. Thanks so much,
Thank
Brian.
you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario.